Hello, greetings, and welcome back to another video. I'm going to talk today about how transformation requires death. You actually need to embrace dying to actually go through a transformation. It's kind of like the caterpillar that goes into the cocoon and it literally dissolves into goo before it becomes a butterfly. It's the greatest representation of a death before a transformation. So I remember when I was facing a lot of suicidal ideation and past suicidal attempts, but this was suicidal ideation, and it was very intrusive and very challenging to be with. And at this point, I didn't have a lot of tools to deal with it. I was still using a lot of substances to numb and bypass. I was very much addicted, psychologically addicted to plant medicines, and that was making things worse. And then it got to a point where I hit critical mass where I was like, okay, this is too much. I've got two kids. I've got to deal with this the normal way. So I reached out to someone, a friend, and he said to me that something wants to die, but it's just not your physical body, not your physical vessel. And I was like, what do you mean? And he just said, some part of you is flagging or signaling internally that it wants to die so it can be reborn. And I was like, it completely changed how I viewed the intrusive suicidal death urge. And since then, whenever that comes up, which is almost not at all anymore, as the death urge is something it's just felt before that arises into a thought. I can feel it before it needs to show up in that way. That once I lent into these parts of me that needed to die, and often it can be a belief, it can be an identity, a mask that you're wearing, like a nice guy mask, or the strong and reliable one, or maybe you're the people pleaser, or the powerful one, or the generous one, whatever it is, like something that is creating an imbalance in your life or creating a dysfunction or afflictions that just don't necessarily or aren't helping you and are in the way of you actually transforming and changing fundamentally, um, is needing to die. It's just needing to fucking die. And I say that in the sense of it just needs to return back to source or return back to nothing. So it's a bit abstract. It is weird. Like you go, oh, what do you mean? You sort of die, and dying, and reborn and rebirth. It's constantly happening, right? Like here I'm drinking a coffee, delicious coffee, and the experience is going to end. And I can get all hung up with that and go, damn, fuck, my coffee's ended. Or I could go make another one if I wanted to, which I'm not. And that's an experience of a death, and then there's a rebirth. The rebirth is into what? Empty cup, no coffee, coffee's consumed. Am I okay with it? Am I not okay with it? Pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. So when we have these come up against these transformations in life, it's not that you haven't already experienced the death of something, because you're constantly having the moment die and become reborn, and die and become reborn, and die and become reborn. But with these identity structures or these belief structures that have been in place since fuck knows how long, childhood, or then it really feels like a death, because we have associated and that as who we are, and that's represented us in the world as this is who I am. So it can be very scary to have these parts of us die and be rebirthed. And often the rebirth of these parts is unknown to us. It's uncertain. We don't know often what's going to be created. But that's the exciting part, is if we can hold an openness and a trust and faith that it will land us in goodness, because I believe life is inherently good, and we are all inherently good, and there's love. So if we are being sincere in our work, our inner work, and sincere in the world, and staying in integrity, these parts of us that we let die become something greater than what they were. So an example that I'll use was when I realized I was being too strong, wearing the mask. I am strong, for everyone around me. And internally, there was a contradiction, because external, I looked strong, could handle fucking everything. Internally, absolutely fucking dying. Like, it was unstable, it was chaos. I was just so good at containing it, like a warrior, like armored up, that it wasn't until I found a teacher that sort of pointed it out. It was like, boom, that's what's happening. And it took a little while to de-armor and to put that mask down. And I actually had to become not strong. I had to embrace being weak and vulnerable for a little while, period, until, and that was a period of time where I was like, well, a little bit all over the shop. And then that strength that is a quality became much stronger, but also became, the armor was able to come on and off. I was able to be vulnerable when I needed to, and be strong when I needed to. It wasn't just glued strength and boom, nothing's not affecting me. I actually became more stable, more strong. I became more powerful because I was actually able to have both, strong and vulnerable, because you need both in life. I believe you need both in life, dependent on the certain circumstances that you are in the moment. So as a father of three, sometimes I just need to be strong. And that's it. Strong. And sometimes I need to be vulnerable. I need to share exactly what's going on with me, with my children. And that helps them actually feel more seen and heard. And because then they're like, oh shit, that's what I'm sensing. Not dad's all strong and being like this, but I can feel inside he's being sad and depressed and blah, 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 blah. But then externally, they're seeing this strong, unfazed, unshakable person. So it needs to be congruent, is what I'm trying to say. It needs to be congruent. So coming back to transformation and a death, often there's a contradiction that's occurring. And this is where you can really start to see where to work with, is go wherever there's contradictions occurring in your life, and then you're contending with the contradiction. So, for instance, I'm being strong, internally wasn't strong, was actually on the verge of collapse, and that's why I wanted to kill myself. It's because I couldn't actually handle inside. But I had to let that mask die. In order to have true strength, I had to be vulnerable enough to face all the shit inside. And then what's arose is actually true strength. The ability to be strong in the face of chaos and in the face of uncertainty, in the face of this and that. But then also the ability to be vulnerable when I need to. When the circumstances arise, vulnerability, sometimes this is strength. Sometimes it is powerful. So this is what I mean by transformation, and it needs a death often. It needs a death. And that's why you see these people. People might have a divorce. People might have a business collapse. People might, like for myself, I went to prison and transformation. People might have near-death experiences. They might have getting sick or disease, and it goes two ways. People either transform and allow themselves to die, have these parts of themselves and beliefs and ways of being die in order for a transformation, or the pattern continues. There's no transformation. There's no death. It compounds. The same thing will compound, and they'll do it again until they get it, till they recognize what is actually happening, the pattern, what's actually happening, what needs to die. So a transformation can occur. So I'm going to leave it there. So you need to have a death and you need to die metaphysically in order for a transformation to occur. You don't have to wait until you have some crazy fucking experience happen in life. You just need to start and turn, inquire, and face your shit with what's exactly happening. So I'll leave it there. Enjoy the video. You like, comment, subscribe, get amongst it, people.